I think the final episode of Season 3 is a great reminder that the Wheel of Time is fantasy TV show. Also, I thought that Samael's scene was absolutely fantastic and didn't expect it at all. From Moiraine's sacrifice to Rand's ascendancy, from Suian's fall to Nynaeve's breakthrough, every moment pulses with tension, love, fury, and loss. Let's jump straight into episode 8 of Season 3. Moiraine and Rand. One of the most deeply satisfying moments in the finale comes through this subtle but powerful emotional exchange between Moiraine and Rand. Their bond, strained through most of Season 2 and 3, finally reaches a place of mutual understanding. Rand, once skeptical of Moiraine's manipulations and rigid guidance, comes to appreciate everything she's done for him. It takes crossing through fire and blood, betrayal and prophecy, but at last, he sees her not just as a guide, but as someone who has sacrificed everything to protect him. The tenderness in their final moments, just before Moiraine sets out to face Lanfear, hits like a hammer. Rand's quiet gratitude and Moiraine's weary but determined resolve lend emotional depth to their arc that has long been in the making. It's not a triumphant farewell, it's an earned one, laced with fear, acceptance, and something like love. The fall of Suian Sanche. Perhaps the most shocking and devastating moment of the entire series comes when Suian Sanche, former Merlin seat, one of the strongest and most principled figures in the White Tower, is brutally betrayed, stilled, and ultimately killed by Eladea. The sheer brutality of her arc in this episode beaten, stripped of her power, and finally executed marks a tragic downfall that few saw coming. Her final speech, impassioned and defiant even in the face of death, is one of the episode's emotional high points. It reaffirms everything she's fought for: integrity, order, and belief in the dragon reborn. But her end is swift and brutal, and when Elada murders her mid-sentence, it sends a chilling message that no position is safe, and the shadow's reach extends even into the tower's heart. For Moiraine, Suian's death is not just a political loss, it's personal. The rawness in her reaction is among the most affecting scenes of the episode, and it fuels the fire she carries into her final confrontation with Lanfear. Moiraine vs. Lanfear. The long-awaited battle between Moiraine and Lanfear finally explodes with brutal beauty. It is a conflict drenched in personal history, magical fury, and emotional pain. At the outset, it looks grim, for Moiraine. Lanfear is stronger, bolder, and unhinged. She doesn't just want Rand. She wants everything and will destroy anything in her path to get it. But what makes this battle stand out isn't just the visual effects or combat, it's the emotion behind every strike. Moiraine's willingness to die, her absolute refusal to let Rand fall into Lanfear's grasp, drives her beyond her limits. And just when it seems all is lost, Lan arrives in time for a perfectly executed rescue, just not before Lanfear stabs Moiraine in a scene that felt, for a moment, like the end of her journey. What follows is catharsis. Moiraine, driven by grief and vengeance, pulls the blade from her body and with chilling resolve, slashes Lanfear's throat again. A bloody punctuation to a rivalry centuries in the making. Nynaeve breaks her block. After seasons of tension, repression, and emotional resistance, Nynaeve Almara's moment finally arrives in Episode 8, and it is nothing short of breathtaking. For so long, Nynaeve has been a volcano of power held back by fear, by guilt, by stubbornness, and by her own refusal to let go. Her arc has always been less about learning the one power and more about allowing herself to embrace vulnerability and trust. And in the most devastating symbolic way possible, this episode forces her into exactly the kind of trial that breaks her and rebuilds her. The sequence begins with a moment that feels almost casual, but is drenched in importance. At the palace in Tanchico, Nynaeve discovers a peculiar collar one that doesn't quite match the description of the Adam she was expecting, but unmistakably feels wrong. It's a slaver's tool, a relic of pain and control. She picks it up, sensing its importance, and chooses not to enter the palace, but instead wait outside. It's a moment of caution, intuition, and strength. But her waiting is interrupted by the one person who has continually tested her emotional limits, Liandrin. The confrontation between Nynaeve and Liandrin is far more than a clash of power. It is a battle of worldviews, of shattered hearts, and wounded identities. Nynaeve, ever the believer in redemption, reaches out to Liandrin with one last attempt at light, reminding her of what she once was. But her words do not inspire a return to grace. They only deepen Liandrin's descent. In a moment that chills the soul, Liandrin claims her own destiny, not as a victim, but as an emerging monster. She declares that she will be the first of a new generation of chosen, more powerful than those who came before. And in a cruel twist, she uses her power to rip the collar from Nynaeve's grasp and cast her helplessly into the sea. It is here, in the cold, crushing depths of despair, literal and emotional, that Nynaeve reaches her breaking point. Bound, sinking, powerless, and exhausted, her arc circles back to the most haunting vision from her accepted test, the life she could never have, the daughter she lost, the peace she was never allowed. In the final moment before surrender, Nynaeve sees that little girl again, not as a vision to flee from, but as a tether to who she really is. This time, she doesn't break. She chooses to fight. That image of her daughter, conjured from her subconscious pain and love, becomes the bridge she needs to reconnect with the one power, not through rage as in the past, but through love, self-belief, and clarity. It's not an eruption of anger. It's an awakening. A memory of why she fights, who she fights for, and what she stands for. Then, in a scene that is both deeply mythological and intensely personal, Nynaeve explodes with power, not in a storm of violence, but in a controlled, divine force. She parts the sea with nothing but her will. The chains around her break. The water itself yields to her command. She rises, soaked, glowing, reborn in spirit and purpose. It is a visual metaphor as much as it is a plot moment. Nynaeve, the blocked, the afraid, the reluctant, has finally stepped into the fullness of her destiny. She no longer needs to be pushed. She no longer waits. She moves forward. Her emergence from the sea is not just a display of magical power. It is a baptism by trauma and choice. She walks out, changed not only in ability, but in essence. Nynaeve is no longer merely the former wisdom of Amon's field struggling to control her gift. She is now a living embodiment of that gift. And though she remains humble, this breakthrough establishes her as one of the most powerful channelers alive, not just because of what she can do, but because of how deeply she understands what it costs. This is her turning point. Her voice no longer trembles. Her hands no longer shake. Her power is no longer conditional. It is hers, and hers alone. And as the pattern tightens, her light will be one the shadow learns to fear. Nynaeve has broken the block, and the world had better pay attention. Mat's encounter with the Elfin. I have a feeling this will be one of the biggest questions lingering after the Season 3 finale. The Elfin are first casually mentioned during a flashback conversation between Eleda and Alviarin in this episode, and they're one of two interdimensional humanoid species, collectively called the Fin. The other group, known as the Aelfin, doesn't appear in He Who Comes with the Dawn, so we'll explore them in greater depth when they officially show up in the live-action series. For now, the focus is on the Elfin fox-like humanoids, whose realm is only accessible through a unique Tel'aran'rhiod, a powerful magical object, specifically a twisted redstone doorframe. This is the very gate Eleda emerges from in the episode's opening scene, and the same one Mat stumbles through in Tanchico. Known in the books as the Foxy Folk due to their appearance, the Elfin have the power to grant 3 wishes to anyone who enters their dimension. But there's always a price. Before granting any wishes, the Elfin demand a price that often brings pain or hardship to the visitor. They also ask whether the person is carrying anything that bears light, iron, or can produce music. Bringing any of these will lead to immediate banishment or even death. Unfortunately for Mat, in more ways than one, he makes his 3 wishes before striking any sort of deal. The Elfin take full advantage, setting a steep and dangerous price. Not only does Mat lose important memories, but he also almost dies suffocating as part of the Elfin's cruel punishment. He ends up being hung as he returns to the real world, which calls back to Min's earlier vision of Mat being hung in Season 3. Even though the Elfin nearly take his life and part of his past, they do leave him with something. After Mat's near-death experience, as Min comforts him, the camera lingers on a fox head medallion hanging around his neck, an item he didn't have before. No spoilers for what's to come, but that medallion is going to play a critical role in Mat's future. Rand declares himself Kara Karn. At the heart of the Wheel of Time Season 3 finale lies a scene steeped in prophecy, pain, and irreversible transformation. Rand Althor's declaration as Kara Karn, the Chief of Chiefs. It's a moment that has lived in the margins of legend for generations among the Aiel, prophesied in Ruidian, whispered across the waste, and now brought screaming into reality, not with triumph, but with a thunderous silence that hangs heavy in the desert air. Rand's journey to this moment has been anything but noble or clean. It's been a path marked by uncertainty, betrayal, and overwhelming pressure. He has wrestled with the truth of who he is and what he must become. From a shepherd boy in the 2 Rivers to the man standing at the sacred ground of Alcair Dal, every choice, every wound has led here. But this moment isn't one of elation. It's one of grief and reckoning. Moiraine's apparent death still echoes in his heart, and he carries it in his posture, in the gravel of his voice, in the way he looks at the assembled Aiel, not with arrogance, but with the haunted clarity of a man who now truly understands what his role will cost. The weight of the moment is mythic. Rand doesn't enter this space with the grandeur of a king or the confidence of a messiah. He arrives wounded, scarred physically and spiritually. Yet, He speaks without hesitation. There's no ceremony, no flourish, only truth. When he claims the title of Karakar, it isn't a claim made lightly. It is a statement forged in the blood of the past and a promise that the future will not be easy. For the IL, this declaration shatters long-held illusions. Rand is not one of them, and yet he is the fulfillment of their deepest prophecy. His very presence fractures their identity, because in proclaiming himself Karakarn, he also embodies the truth of their origin, a truth many are still unwilling to face. Some kneel immediately, overcome by the awe of prophecy realized. Others hesitate, uncertain, afraid, or even resentful. But there is no longer room for denial. The pattern has tightened. The dragon has come. And this is not the same Rand we knew in Season 1. That boy is gone. In his place stands a man who has buried friends, been manipulated by forsaken, broken hearts, and now finds himself standing at the crossroads of fate with nothing but pain to guide him. His voice, steady and cold, carries not the joy of a new beginning, but the weight of vengeance and responsibility. Rand isn't embracing his destiny. He's surrendering to it. He understands that his life no longer belongs to him. It belongs to the world. The scene is a masterstroke of character evolution and thematic payoff. Visually austere, yet emotionally rich, it distills everything that the Wheel of Time has been building toward. It is not a coronation, it is a burial. A farewell to innocence. A declaration of war. And as the camera closes in on Rand's eyes, now hardened with purpose, we understand that this is no longer a story about a boy chosen by fate. This is now a story about a man who will either save the world or break it. The dragon has declared himself, and the world will never be the same. Liandrin and Moiraine. As Season 3 closes with seismic shifts across the landscape of the light, the final scenes deliver a haunting reminder that the true war is still to come. While Rand's emergence as the dragon reborn and Nynaeve's breakthrough seem to signal victory, the dark forces operating behind the veil are not only regrouping, they are evolving. In the closing moments of the episode, the narrative pivots sharply into darkness with the reintroduction of one of the most terrifying figures from the Age of Legends, Moiraine. Her arrival is quiet, but deeply unsettling. In contrast to Lanfear's operatic flair and emotional chaos, Moiraine radiates a chilling calm, a precise, coiled menace that promises something far more calculated and sinister. She does not scream or rage. She whispers. She studies. She waits. And when she strikes, it is not with thunder, but with a needle-point blade aimed at the heart of order itself. Her name alone is enough to shake even the most powerful, and her presence in the finale is a masterful reminder that not all evil in this world wears its malice on its sleeve. In Moiraine's brief appearance, she offers something far more frightening than Lanfear ever did: control. She is not driven by broken love or passion. She is driven by the desire to unmake structure, to dominate from the shadows, and to dismantle the world piece by piece until nothing but fear and silence remain. This shift in tone, this colder, more calculating form of evil signals that the shadow is changing its strategy. It's no longer about seduction or emotional chaos. It's about infiltration, control, and extermination. Nowhere is this change more apparent than in her new recruit, Liandrin. Over the course of Season 3, Liandrin has been a complex, contradictory figure. Once a loyal a Dai of the Red Aeja, she became a betrayer of the Tower, a manipulator of novices, a tool of the shadow, and yet also, at times, a woman revealed to be broken by trauma, fear, and grief. Her twisted sense of protection, particularly toward her dying son, added unexpected humanity to a character that might otherwise have remained a one-note villain. That subtle tragedy made her dangerous, not because she was entirely evil, but because she believed her choices were necessary. But under Moiraine's influence, Liandrin is no longer torn. The woman who once straddled the line between ambition and guilt, between rebellion and servitude, has now taken a decisive step into darkness. This isn't the Liandrin who hesitated before harming Nynaeve. This is someone who has surrendered to the shadow, not just for survival, but for purpose. In Moiraine, she sees not just power, but clarity. No more ambiguity. No more tower politics. Just a single, absolute cause. Tear it all down. Their alliance is one of perfect narrative symmetry. Moiraine needs someone already inside the tower's walls, and Liandrin needs someone to give her the purpose she lost when her child died and her faith crumbled. Together, they represent a new face of the shadow, cold, efficient, and deeply embedded in the very institutions the light depends on. If Lanfear was fire and chaos, Moiraine is the noose tightening slowly, invisibly, until there is no breath left to resist. The scene's final line, Moiraine's eerie assurance that Lanfear was never the worst of us, lands like a curse. It isn't just a threat. It's a truth. Lanfear's chaos was personal and messy. Moiraine is surgical. Her reach is wide, her patience is long, and her cruelty is absolute. As Season 4 looms, their partnership promises a war fought not just with magic and swords, but with subversion, corruption, and psychological warfare. The White Tower may already be compromised. The rules are being rewritten, and the enemy no longer needs to hide behind armies. She is already inside the walls. The war against the shadow has only just begun, and the light has never looked more vulnerable. Where's Perrin in the Wheel of Time Season 3 finale? Perrin, now going by his new title, Lord Goldeneyes, is noticeably absent from the Season 3 finale. That's because he had an entire episode focused on him the previous week, April 10, which effectively wrapped up his arc for this season. Looking ahead to a possible fourth season, Perrin finds himself in a pretty tough position. After leading the people of the Two Rivers and successfully defending the town against an onslaught of Trollocs and Dark Friends, he turned himself in to the Children of the Light. This was for killing their leader's father during the Season 2 finale. In one of the closing moments of this season's finale, we see Fael, Bane, and Shiad discover the Children of the Light's camp before heading back to the Two Rivers. The big question now is, will they try to break Perrin out of custody? Or will he eventually be released by the military group? With any luck, Season 4 will give us the answers. Final thought. Season 3 of The Wheel of Time began with characters searching for purpose, scattered across the world, trying to understand who they were in a story larger than themselves. It ends with those same characters transformed, some through loss, others through revelation, and a few through sheer willpower. The finale isn't perfect. It moves quickly, leaves some threads loose, and may feel rushed in places. But what it delivers is something few fantasy shows manage: emotional consequence. This isn't a story about destiny alone. It's about what you sacrifice to fulfill it. Moiraine's body on the ground. Suyin's blood on the White Tower floor. Perrin's chains. Mat's broken memory. Egwene's grief. Nynaeve's awakening. Rand's sorrow beneath his crown. The Wheel of Time Season 3 ends not with a happy ending, but with the kind of ending that demands more. More war. More growth. More answers. More time. And if the wheel wills it, we'll be back for the next turning.